Welcome to Boundless Pursuit, a weekly podcast providing motivation, entertainment, and education to anglers and outdoorsmen. I hope that the stories you'll find here will encourage you to chase your passion more fervently, to open your mind to new opportunities and perspectives. Your engagement and feedback is critical to the growth of this show, and I would love to hear your suggestions on topics or potential guests. You can reach me at boundlesspursuitfishing@gmail.com or at my website, www.boundless-pursuit.com. That's where you'll find all related articles, media, and merchandise. Please remember, the show will gain traction from your support. Be sure to like, comment, and share this podcast to your friends and connections. I'm your host, David Graham. Now let's get on to today's episode. Today's guest is my buddy, Joe Dahl of Minnesota. And he's another one of these motivated, nomadic wanderers with a rod and a reel. And if you haven't noticed by now, these are my favorite kind of anglers. The species hunters, the guys that might be found with a car jam-packed full of rods and fishing gear, looking for the next bite, looking for the next species. And Joe is just much more my speed. He's a very well-rounded angler that stays low-key and self-motivated. This is not a guy that's out there trying to become insta-famous. And I just think he's one of those people that is clearly in it for the purity of the sport and fishing for all the right reasons. And I look through his catches and you'll see anything from flatheads to drum, sharks, bowfin, buffalo, moon eye. You'll see fish like salmon, sturgeon, monster fish like alligator gar, snakeheads, red horse suckers, walleye, just to name a few. It's just a guy that's got his head down and he's grinding and enjoying the process of just fishing. So we take time during this conversation just to cover some of his various exploits, driving all over the country, trying to catch different kinds of fish. And I appreciate variety. We all should. And this is just a great conversation while we delve into why you should too. This is Joe Dahl. All right. Well, Joe Dahl, what's going on? It's good to actually talk to you in sort of person, still through a screen, but I've been following your stuff for a while, so it's good to actually chat with you. How's it been going?
It's been good.
Where are you at now? You in Minnesota? It looks like Minnesota's home for you?
Yeah, I'm currently in Minnesota, just in suburbs of Minneapolis.
I gotta ask where you're at, because every time I get on your page, it looks like you're somewhere else. Like you're like the consummate journeyman angler. Like every time I look at you, like you're down in Texas, you're over in Florida, you're like ice fishing one day, and then your toes are in the sand the next day. I'm like, man, this dude freaking gets around. He gets after it. So, it's interesting. It's funny when I saw that you're from Minnesota. I'm like, it makes sense. I don't know what it is about Minnesota, but it seems like that state spawns more like, I don't know if you want to say like rough fish guys, but just like species hunters than any other state. I'm like, is there something in the water? Like what the hell is that about? So.
Yeah, it could be. The rough fish website, since the creators of it are from Minnesota, and then just kind of branched out, and I think it was like early 2000s, so it got a lot of people kind of on the rough fish train. And yeah, that's kind of what I stumbled into. Probably like 2013 or 14. I've always been into like different rough fish and everything, and like catfish kind of, and happened to work with someone named Ben Erb, and he got me in.
Okay, I know Ben. Yeah.
We worked together right out of high school at a fishing store. So we're both like, you like other fish than walleye and bass in Minnesota? And we're like, yeah. So we like clicked instantly, and we were out catfishing and like doing the weird stuff like that. And then he kind of got me on the life listing for different species, and kind of got me in the loop on like red horse and everything. So since like 2013, 14, I've been kind of adding up different lifeless species. It's not always my main focus for fishing, but I would like to add a few here and there, especially like the Minnesota ones.
Yeah, the species hunting thing is always kind of like a satisfying quest. If you get to that point in your fishing where you need objectives and you need like I don't know, structure or like you need like a goal. That's always a good one because it's an endless journey. There's no way you're going to catch them all, but it's a kind of a fun thing to see the number go up and keep track of it. But you mentioned the Rough Fish website. Did you get on this? Like, are you actually been on the website? You getting into that group?
Yeah, I have. I've been on the website for like a while, and I added some of my species at first when I was on there, and then it kind of dwindled, and I didn't really add them. I just added them on Facebook since that was mostly people I knew, and I don't think I really chimed in too much on the website. I used it more as like a point of reference to kind of look at different species and like habitat tactics and all that. So they have like a really good log of just fish encyclopedia stuff for all the information you need on the non-traditional stuff. And it's a good resource to go off of.
Yeah, roughfish.com. That is an interesting one. And actually, I want to get Andy, one of the webmasters of that site, on this program. We tried a couple times, can't quite seal the deal. But I found that website, I want to say it was 2002, like when I was like 13 years old. And man, it's so weird. It's like, especially back then during the forum days when you didn't have social media websites and things like that. It's like you only had the forums. Like it was, especially back in that day, like the ultimate resource of information for like different species of fish. And like I got on there and I was like the only out of state guy that was like getting on there. But I agree with your point. Like they had put in a lot of effort to like make that be like the resource for like information for species that you'd find. And I'd say even today, a lot of their like species identification and just like fact sheets that they have are probably some of the best you'll find on the internet. So, their forums have slowed down a lot, which is, that's just the nature of where we're at with the internet nowadays. But it's funny you mentioned that. I figured if you're a multi-species guy in Minnesota, you've probably run across the Rough Fish crew.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a cool group. I went to the Rough Fish Roundup one year on the Root River there. So I did a little bit of that and met up with a few people that I knew from there. And that's a fun time. It seems like it's kind of shifted though. Like I said, I've used the website to get information from, but then a lot of it's on like Facebook now too.
Yep.
So it's so easy just to take a picture and do that instead of like logging in and doing forum style stuff when it's a few clicks away on your phone to do the same thing almost, but it's just not archived really. So it's kind of like a cluster when the website's a little bit more organized. So it's kind of like here's some stuff on the Facebook page and then maybe do some research on the website.
Yeah, you'll probably get a quicker answer if you like post on the Facebook page like a question, but yeah, their information pages on their website are great. It's kind of sad to see it slow down a little bit, but what are you going to do? I mean, I remember when it was like their sister sites, or they were like kind of like, they're all grouped together. You had roughfish.com, the Bowfin Anglers group, and then like Gar Anglers Sporting Society. They were like the trio of websites that I used to get on. Then slowly the Bowfin site went down and the Gar site went down, but Roughfish is still hanging on. But you being one of the multi-species guys, I feel like there's a certain mindset that we multi-species people have that, like, I don't know if it's like the way that you were your whole life or what, but just kind of give me, I don't know. I guess the quick 411 or rundown on like when you began fishing. Cause I feel like we all kind of start the same way. And then at some point the curiosity like tips us towards that other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, were you going with your dad? Were you just going on your own? Like, how did you kind of find yourself at the water's edge?
Yeah, so like you mentioned with Minnesota being like huge into fishing, I kind of come from just like a long line of fishermen like in my family. So like my great grandpa, he was a native Minnesota angler, and then he passed it down to my grandpa, and then my grandpa passed it on to my dad, and then my dad down to me. So I've been fishing since I was literally unable to walk, and my dad would bring me down to like docks around where we lived and just fish for like sunfish, you know what I mean? The gateway fish, and then kind of slowly progress from there. But I remember just going to like my grandpa's house, and he had some of his dad's like muskie rods there, and they were just like these old antique like rods that were like stiff as a broom. And I remember seeing them and I was like, oh man, this is awesome. Like my great grandpa fished for muskie, and it was kind of intriguing. So kind of started from there, and then just did a lot of like crappie fishing and typical Minnesota stuff growing up. And then it kind of did with like bycatch stuff where I would end up being like, oh, this is awesome. Like we would fish the Mississippi River a lot, and whether catching like white bass or like catfish and stuff like that. But I think the thing that really got me was pike kind of intrigued my fishing like spark, I guess, this like their aggressiveness and their teeth, and was just something different that I was like, wow, this is great. Like people love the bass and walleye and pike. Some people do, but a lot of people frown upon them. And I'm like, how can you get mad when you catch a fish that's like aggressive, fights hard, and just is just an overall cool fish? So I kind of started going from there and just figuring out like lures and like habitat and different stuff. And that was when I was like 10 years old, probably.
Yeah.
And then when I was about 11 or 12, I accidentally caught a bowfin, and when we were crappie fishing. And then then I was like, that did it even more. So I was like, oh man, there's fish out there that are like pike, but just like undesired, but still awesome, like in their own way.
Yeah.
Like that.
So those kind of stories are always funny to me, because I feel like if you can just encounter the fish before you ever hear about them, like you're good, you're golden, you're set. But because without fail, there's always like the negative people that will come in and be like, well, you don't want to catch this and you don't want to catch that, and these are the good fish and those are the trash fish. But a lot of times when you encounter those fish first, like free of the outside voices, and you draw your own conclusions first, and it's like you start to realize like all the fish that you find the most exciting like also happen to be the ones people talk crap about. Then it's almost like they become your recruiters. They're like, oh, that thing's a trash fish, just like a carp. You're like, carp, you say? It's like, what I mean? It's like at least that's how it happened for me. I was like catching a lot of the same types of fish you're mentioning. Not pike. I've never caught a pike. I really want to catch a pike, but I'd I'd run across bowfin before I'd ever heard somebody talk about them. So it was like I beat them to the punch. I beat the negative voices to the punch. So when people start saying all this crappy stuff about them, that's not my experience with them. So then everything that else from there on out, when people said such and such was not a worthy fish, it like made me more interested in going to find out. Because I'm like, well, that's the same thing you said about bowfin, and you couldn't have been more wrong. So let me just find out for myself. But
you got to find out about it before you hear like the rap. Like if you get into fishing later in life and stuff, or you hear like just stories passed down and rumors and all that, you know what I mean? Just like the rough fish or trash fish, or they're bad for the lake kind of thing or whatever, which I never heard any of that. And my dad was never like that also either. So he kind of loved catching anything also. So that's kind of where I got it from. And then it kind of branched out. And then as I got older, tracking down different stuff, like I said, like catfish and red horse, carp, anything you can find in the river. So I got really attached to the river and grew up fishing the Minnesota River, actually, and its backwaters, like I mentioned, for a little bit of everything. So the river is kind of just really attracting me just for like the diverse species that it held and everything. And I actually have like a picture that I pulled out of like the bowfin that I caught right here. If you can see this.
Is that the first one you caught?
Yeah, it's the very
and
first
the hook
I caught, and I taped the hook to it right there. And at the time, it was I think the Minnesota state record was only like maybe like 8 pounds or something, because this was in like 2000. Maybe
that's like a 1/0 octopus hook, isn't it? Like what size is that?
Yeah. Oh, I think this was like we're using for crappie. It was like
even smaller.
Yeah, it was like a 6 or a 4. And I thought it was so cool. And I was like, I'm going to save this and tape it to the picture. And the fish was like 29 inches or something. And it was probably around that like maybe 7-8 pound range. So it was close to like state record at the time. Now it's like 10 pounds maybe or something, maybe 9. I'm not sure.
Oh,
But
for a kid, that's like the greatest thing ever. I wish I had that. I got some old pictures of them, but I don't have my first. I do have a photo of my very first ever gar, which is pretty funny. I still have that one. I still have the original copy of that. Same like you, but that's pretty. And the hook, that's pretty good. But
yeah, I always like to hang on to little like a memento of like fishing stuff. You know, I mean, you catch like a big fish or your first fish and on
yeah,
it, and you're like a personal best, and then you just like cut your rig off or the lure off, and then just like hang it somewhere, and you
yeah.
just kind of look at it, and you're just like get a good like you're like all right, I remember that good times kind of thing. And I guess I started doing it when I was younger, and I still do it now when I get something good.
Yeah, that's fun. I think a lot of anglers do that. You have like these weird superstitions or these weird like attachments to inanimate objects that like they have value after you've like experienced something with them. Like, I get that way with certain hats. Like this one obviously doesn't have much mojo. There's no fish slime on it, but I've got hats that are just so decrepit and like in such horrible condition. But I can't bring myself to throw them away because I remember the fish that I caught with him. But like the guy that I had a guy on, I don't know, it was like a couple days ago, this dude named Chris, from here in Miami. And his room was funny. He kind of panned around with the camera and he had all these like flare hawk jigs like all over the like ceiling of his room. It was like chandeliers of them. And he's like, every single one of those is 100-pound fish because he goes and catches tarpon with him. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But
yeah.
So you get sentimental like that with objects. Do you have like maybe you alluded to it with the pike, but like as far as I would say Minnesota goes, like home waters, do you have like a fish that like kind of always brings you back? Like, do you have a favorite? Because looking through your photos, I mean, we're talking gar, bowfin, sturgeon, carp, buffalo, flatheads, suckers. I mean, you've got a really, really like diverse collection of fish to your name. So, but I always like to ask, like, but what's the one for you? Like, you got to have that one that's near and dear to the heart.
I'd definitely have to say both, and just from like the story I kind of just told and the picture that I showed you, that it kind of like really sparked my interest for just rough fish and undesired. And it was just like, you're a little kid and you just
Yeah.
catch something big, and just the experience of it, and it was just like unexpected. It like fought hard. It was like big for my age, like a 10-pound fish. Like this is the biggest thing ever and stuff. So it really like got your imagination going. And yeah, so that's kind of been like it since. So I definitely have to say both, and for probably overall favorite species and Minnesota species as well. But
Yeah.
pike's right up there too, because that was my thing that got me kind of, like I said, it was like the intro to other fish, and then the bowfin kind of sealed the deal. So they're pretty close in comparison.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I think the bowfin is such a great like entry into fishing type of species for a kid that might be, I don't know, kind of interested in being outdoors, but maybe not necessarily interested in picking up a fishing rod. I mean, that was me. Like I was just a kid down by the creek kicking rocks and trying to catch snakes. But then something about a bowfin was like, oh my God, because I think it's the reptilian, like just wild look about them. I don't know. And then obviously they fight hard and stuff, but it's funny you mentioned that. The one that like really seems to pop out a lot on your page, at least when I was looking at it, is the flatheads. Like you've got a lot of big flatheads. Is that in your home waters or is that somewhere else?
Yeah, that's my home waters here. So I fish like the Minnesota River a lot, and then the Mississippi River. At the very like top of Minnesota where it starts basically. So there's like 29 locks and dams on the Mississippi here. And I fish, and then between the locks and dams is considered the pools. So I fish pool 2 and 3. And pool 2 is the furthest north like range of flatheads. So above that, there's not any flatheads on the Mississippi. I mean, I've heard of a few stragglers getting through or something, but I wouldn't actively target them there. So I'm fishing like the first pool that has flatheads in it, and then just right a mile downriver, that's where the Minnesota dumps in to the Mississippi there. So you can go right from there up the Minnesota River and stuff, which is very well known flathead river there. So that's kind of what I've been doing the last maybe like 5 years or so that I've really gotten into, because this Minnesota is like
Yeah.
one of their big fish, like apex predator, and that's just kind of what I've gravitated towards when I have like my days that I go out fishing and can't travel somewhere ideally, you know what I mean? So like one of my main fish that I actively target.
Yeah, that's one I really wish we had down. I mean, there's some good flathead waters in like northern Florida and like the panhandles, but like I mean,
Mm-hmm.
any further south, they're just gone. So that's a species that I miss because they're so awesome. Like that's one I could devote a lot of time to, but I just don't have access to. But because like to your point, they're like predators. I mean, they'll pick up, I guess, be opportunistic and take cut chunks, but more so,
Mm-hmm.
I know they're more of an active predator, which is just interesting to think of when you think about catfish. Because, most people, they think a channel catfish or a blue catfish that sort of lazily lumber around eating, cut shad. But like the flathead's like a different beast. And I've been fortunate enough to catch some pretty nice ones on the Santee Cooper system in South Carolina. But ever since then, I mean, it's been years since I've caught one. It's a trip I want to take. And so I was curious, like the way that you do it. I know some people will catch them on lures, but like what is your approach? I know they can be like a tough one to work with because they're holding the structure, or they're in currents. I mean, so like I don't know if you're gearing up for a day of flathead fishing in your neck of the woods. What are you looking for?
Ideally, like in the springtime, usually when they start in like May, I'm looking for pretty much current seams because in the springtime with the snow melt and everything, rivers are a lot of the time going to be high. So I'll kind of go towards those current seams and those slack water areas, and kind of like any predator, they'll hang out in a slack water area waiting to ambush something, and they'll use them as kind of like highways to get to their spawning ground. So they'll be in their like hibernating uh, area in the river, and then come spring, they're going to move back to their spawning grounds and then into that wood and everything. So that's pretty much what I'll actively target is current seams, like sandbars, bends in the river. I don't really do a whole lot of like wood fishing then. And then
Mm,
once like kind of like into July, then that's kind of when I'll switch to wood, and they seem to kind of like hunker down because then they'll actually be spawning then,
okay.
and they'll be in those woods and cut banks and everything. So I'll do that, and then I'll kind of run. Since we're only allowed one line in Minnesota, which is a shame, and there's a whole fiasco going with trying to get two lines, and he keeps getting put down and all that. But I'll usually run live bait most of the time, a bullhead, and sometimes too early in the spring I'll do cut bait like creek chubs or some sort of sucker freshwater drum. Um, and yeah, that's kind of how I'll do it. Sometimes shore, sometimes boat. Really depends, I guess, how much time I have, what the water's at, if I'm by myself, if I'm with a friend, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But I kind of like doing it a lot from shore. Just I don't know, something about it. Maybe because you can have a fire, you can just like kick back and stuff. And
Yeah.
in a boat, you have to haul it there and unload it. And yeah, you can move to different spots. You probably catch ratio is up a lot higher in the boat, I'd say. But something about the shore is just kind of convenient and just kind of fun to do.
Oh
Plus, you can
yeah.
get to some areas too that are kind of hard to access from boat, or you can kind of get in there more quietly, I guess, or just kind of stealthily, kind of like probe out like a spot.
Right. I think that's funny that you know, and you're not the only guy that's mentioned it on this podcast, that the use of one rod, like that limit to one rod. I'm like, man, that's tough. But I would think that, as much as that sucks, like I'll use all kinds of rods, but that's gotta like force the anglers in Minnesota to get more like adept at like finding the fish. Like if you when you have to like comb an area, you can only do it with one rod at a time. So I imagine, especially in recent times when you've done a little bit more travel, it's got to be nice to be able to not be restricted like that. But geez, but yeah, I always had trouble with the flatheads because of the live bait thing, and it's like it's you need live bait, and then you need a fish near structure. And if you use big enough live bait, the live bait gets in the structure. So it's like that was always my challenge. Like, what is your setup? Are you like up above, like upstream of it, like to where your bait is like above current, and you're trying to draw them out? I mean, it's a type of fishing that's
Yeah,
always
Yeah, so I'll go upriver of it. And then I guess depending how big the snag is, and then after fishing them a certain amount of times, you kind of learn the area a little bit more, where to cast, where to not cast. So I definitely lose a lot of terminal tackle and bait and everything, and my fair share of like casting it straight into the wood pile itself.
Yeah.
But I guess that's part of the learning curve. And yeah, so I usually go upriver of that and then just kind of get it close to the wood, not like straight up in it, because a lot of time, like you said, your bait will get in it or the fish will grab it and run right back into it and hang you up. So right on the outer edge, and they'll definitely see it or smell it mostly, and they'll come out and eat it if they're willing to.
Yeah, and then I guess you got the battle of trying to pull them against the current away from the snags they're probably trying to get back into. But gosh, I get so jealous. I get so jealous of guys that get to go do that. Josh, who we just mentioned earlier, I'm really jealous of what they do, I guess, in some of the rivers he has, is they'll actually, at certain windows of the year when they're doing their spawn run or whatever they're doing, he's got these rivers where they can kind of rock hop, like jump from rock to rock to rock, and you can visibly see the flatheads, and they're casting these swim baits at them, catching them on lures. I was like, now I've got to go do that. Like, that's one I really want to do. I tried to do it last year, but just didn't get it timed out right and just missed the window. But I don't know. It's just a cool fish.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never caught one on a lure.
You do a lot more than just the flatheads, but I think the style of fishing that has become big with the rough fish crew, especially out there in Minnesota, that's so much different than typical fishing, is the sucker fishing. Like, when did you get into that? I think you alluded to maybe Ben kind of introduced you to that, but like that style of fishing, like kind of tell me about, I don't know, your progression into that world. Cause I've done a little bit of it and it's enough to drive you crazy. Like, you'll see the fish, like they're right in front of you, but they're not eating. Like, it's just so different.
Yeah. Ben got me into them as we fished like rivers, and then it came spring. So big thing in Minnesota too is just like around pretty much this time of year until like April, there's not much open for fish besides like rough fish and designated bodies of water. So kind of introduced me to the red horse and sucker fishing in the spring in the rivers, because it provided a lot of action and just like early fun in the spring to kind of get ready for summer and different fish seasons opening up and whatnot. So I'm no expert in it. There's people from the rough fish and like Ben that are really good at it and know exactly what to look for and all that. But I feel like I have a general good sense of like red horse, and I've got all the like major red horse here besides black red horse. That's the only one I don't have, and I haven't really tried for one actively. So maybe sometime. Not super high up there on the list, but same with like the suckers. I haven't got like a spotted one, which that would be cool. I know a few locations to try for those, maybe this spring. And then one that's high up on my list is blue sucker. So I've kind of narrowed down some spots that I might want to try this spring for a blue sucker, since that's kind of like the holy grail of the sucker species. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's like the coveted one. That one's funny. It's such a cool looking fish too. But ironically, so I haven't done a lot of sucker fishing. Like, everywhere I've lived, there's not been a lot of different kinds of suckers around. I mean, South Carolina has almost, well, I won't say none, just a lot lesser known kinds. But I have caught a black red horse and I have caught spotted suckers. So it's just ironically the ones that you mentioned, they're like the only ones I have caught. And I caught them both in Arkansas.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I caught spotted suckers in Southwest Arkansas years ago. Same place that I first caught my first bowfin, actually, ironically, was loaded with them. And then I caught a black red horse, and I didn't even know what it was. I went to roughfish.com or to the Roughfish Facebook page maybe to post photos of it to ask them, because, those guys are on it. Like that, like if you have a question about a species and you just need help identifying, like those guys are so dialed in with it. And I posted it, and they're like,
they all like freaked out because it was a black red horse, and I don't know, maybe they're kind of hard to come by, but they're like, where did you catch it? Exact locations. But I was like, it's just in some little ditch creek down the road from my house. Yeah, that's the extent of my experience with those. I mean, and they just, you ain't got them down here in Florida, so it's a world I won't get to be a part of for a while. But it's one that interests me because, and another one that I had managed to catch. I'm like the dumb guy that's caught a lot of like really rare stuff by strokes of crazy luck, with like the Gulf sturgeon. This, recently that was kind of like the big one. And then years ago when I was a kid, I caught river carp suckers, and that is a really tough one. Like I remember in Oklahoma, I had a spot in Oklahoma, and like you could see hundreds of these carp suckers below this little dam, like massive schools of them. I was just like drifting worms through them. It was like bouncing off their heads. They were not eating. I'm like, what drives these things to feed? And then I don't know if I just managed to catch, like, I'd be sitting there drifting for hours, worms past their face with nothing, and then managed to get one, maybe two to commit. But I'm like, you talk about I don't know. That's such a weird one because I've seen photos of people holding them with like a lure sticking out of their mouth. So I don't know if you had any experience with the carp suckers, but that's one that'll drive you nuts.
Yeah, I haven't caught any the like you mentioned the river carp suckers, but I have caught
Quillbacks,
which
yeah.
This is so about like 4 years ago, I was trying for them like pretty actively in a few creeks by me, and then randomly I caught two like back to back in the spring, using like red worms, and it was this kind of like a fluke. I like most people will sight fish them and everything, but in the springtime, like you mentioned, they're weird. They'll hit lures sometimes. They'll eat like worms or whatever, and I don't know why. It's just they're just hard to catch because they're feeding on like microscopic stuff and algae or teeny bugs. But something about like in the spring, they'll feed on bigger things or something, I guess. So yeah, I just lucked into catching like two back to back, and that was in like 2017, and those were the last two that I've caught. So I kind of like checked that one off my list, and I'm like, all right, we'll leave it at that. And if I happen to catch another one, I will.
Yeah, same with me. I was like 14 when I caught them, and now I'm 36 now. So I was like, well, I may go to my grave before I ever catch another one of those. So that's the same thing. I wrote that off. Got a couple of pictures of me, tiny little me, floating around holding them. But I guess the one that is probably real interesting to me, where I guess it's in Minnesota, is the lake sturgeon. That's one I really want to, like, I will travel to go do that. I might at that stage where I'm trying to figure out, well, where am I going to go? Because it's like there's different areas that seem really good, but the lake sturgeon's like high on my list. Like it's one of like the kind of like those the ones of greater interest than most, at least as far as North America goes. I want to get one through the ice. I don't know why. I make it like maybe that's harder, maybe that's easier. But I'm like this Florida boy, and I want to have an ice fishing experience, but I really want to pull a sturgeon through a hole in the ice for some reason. But tell me about your experience with those lake sturgeon. That's a cool one.
Yeah, I do enjoy lake sturgeon. They're pretty abundant here in Minnesota in a few different rivers. And usually you go out and you catch a few, I guess. So they're not like super rare or anything. To catch like a monster one is harder.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time you go out and be like, oh, I'm going to catch like 5 of them. You're like, okay, it was an okay night or whatever. And then anything else like flatheads, you go out, you catch 5 or even one. You're like, oh man, that was a great night, kind of thing. So they are a little bit more abundant and everything, but I like the fight and everything too. So it's something I kind of got used to, I guess. So I don't really actively target them a whole lot. I guess, like I said, they're more common and I've kind of experienced it. And then it's kind of like, kind of left at that. So I will a few times a year. I definitely don't do it in ice because people will sit there for hours and hours just staring at their bobber and their hole.
Yeah.
And I know I go out so much, and for like a season they'll catch maybe like one, maybe like 3 if they're lucky, something like that. So I have caught a few through ice, but it's not really my cup of tea. I like to stay kind of actively ice fishing for like crappie and pike and getting on fish. Just it's just a whole different type of thing to do this sturgeon through the ice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what do you get them on? Like, what are they eating? Worms?
Through the ice or through the
Either. I mean, they pretty much pick up a cut chunk of bait, or is it mostly just worms with them? I mean,
yeah, a lot of people do worms on a circle hook or shad on a circle hook too, and then you just kind of line it and then just either watch your rod tip really carefully or put like a bell on it, and then you just look for the most like subtle rod quiver. And then for ice fishing, I think it's mostly worms and then like some minnows on there, like a little combo. And then you kind of drop it right to the bottom, and then you put the bobber at exactly when like your sinker touches the bottom, so it's standing straight up. And then you do the same thing, look for your bobber barely to twitch, or some people put it on the side or like even outside of the hole and wait for the sturgeon to pick it up, and your bobber will actually fall into the hole. So it's like a little like hair trigger system like that. But yeah, I do it more, but it's about an hour from me. And then in the winter time too, I want to catch fish. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like you take all the time, hour there, hour back, who knows, maybe 4 or 5 hours fishing, and you're just kind of hoping for the best, which something awesome could happen there, but I'll just wait for open water to roll around for them.
Yeah, it's no fun to drive that far and then just blank, especially if it's for a fish that's not all that, like, I don't know, maybe you don't find to be all that special. But it's weird, like that a fish that gets that big, because they get big, but it seems like the characteristic trait of most sturgeon is that subtle little small bite. It's kind of funny how that works. Even like apparently the big white sturgeon is the same way, just like barely. Even the Gulf sturgeon that I got lucky with, I didn't even think that I had a bite. I just looked over and the rod was kind of like down a little bit. I thought I was like snagged on something. I was doing like a check. I was going to like just do a bait check, and then all of a sudden it started pulling back. I was like, oh, hell. But that's funny.
Yeah, that's awesome. That Gulf sturgeon, super sweet. I saw that and I was like, no way.
I was just
especially like you get it in like a river too.
I was just dumb luck. But that was a cool one. That'll be a hard one for me to top, but so I see the kind of like poster over your shoulder of the different fish of Minnesota. How many of those species have you managed to knock off? You got just about all of them?
Yeah, pretty close. I think the only ones I'm really missing are coho salmon. What else is it? We're gonna take a look.
See, I thought I'd seen photos of you with a coho. Or is that a different state?
No, I caught pink salmon and Chinook salmon. I haven't caught a coho.
Okay.
Lake whitefish, black red horse, blue sucker. There's like a bunch on the poster that or ones that aren't on the poster, but I'd say a good majority of like the standard size species, like not micro or anything like that, I have caught. But yeah, there's still a few hanging around. I still haven't got a lake trout. Never tried for those. Those are pretty far north, Minnesota, almost like into Canada and stuff, or pretty much Lake Superior.
Yeah. That's
so you
pretty
have to
cool.
travel into like the Boundless water and everything like that.
Well, it seems like lately you've been a little more interested in getting out of the state boundaries, and like especially this last, I don't know, year or two that I've been watching your stuff. You're doing a lot more of the traveling. So, I don't know. I have all the faith you'll end up catching those Minnesota fish, but it seems like you're occupying your time with other stuff. So I guess namely one of the more recent ones that I saw was your trip down to Texas. What was, and I saw that you knocked off the alligator gar, and then you did a little bit of a buffalo fishing, but what was the nature of that trip? I mean, you were kind of far from home. What were like the targets? Where all did you go?
Um, let's see. Yeah, so alligator gar, that one was up on my species list. Like it was like top of the top for me. It's like apex predator, big, mean. Like it doesn't get pretty much any better than that.
Mhm.
So that was way up there. And I was like, man, I just got to do it. Which I've taken like some fishing trips and stuff. But I usually stay around like Midwest and everything, and then
Yeah.
kind of did like a wing it trip and went down there. And it was like right in 2022. So when like shit hit the fan, I was uh, like you kind of think about it and you're just like, man, like I just got to get out and do like the stuff I really want to do, because you keep like you put it off and you're like, oh, I'll eventually get to it. Like you just got to do it now.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what it was. Went down there and just like absolutely like fell in love with Texas, like the fish and like the weather and the food and,
Yeah.
and the saltwater fishing. So I got like the whole Texas experience, and like it was just so awesome. And I was down there for like 2 weeks, and in the last 2 years I've been down there like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And I've had people like I run into them and they're like, I thought you moved to Texas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, not yet. I hope maybe someday, but yeah, I absolutely love Texas. And the saltwater fishing was just kind of like a breath of fresh air compared to like Minnesota, because you know what I mean? Like probably what you did too, growing up in like South Carolina, where you just fish for everything, and then it kind of like hits almost a dead end where it's still fun, but you just like you want something new, and you want like a new experience and like a learning curve for different stuff. So that's what the saltwater did for me. And I was like, oh, this is so new. There's tides and the lures and rigs, and like I went down there first time, I was using like braid and like my braided leader and everything, and I was getting broke off like the smallest stuff. And that's when I was like, okay, I got to switch and use fluorocarbon and everything with like the spider weights. And I brought like catfish weights down there. And yeah, just learning that kind of stuff was awesome. So that's kind of progressed into my trips lately, is the saltwater stuff, doing for like big stuff, sharks, and then learning a lot about that, like surf casting, and even fishing like piers just for the smaller fish that I've kind of got into that are really cool, like pompano, like those inshore lizard fish, remoras, the ones that like stick to the bottom sides of sharks and stuff, you know.
Oh, you've caught those
so
on hook and line. That's pretty interesting. I've never tried that one.
Yeah,
I just pull them off the sides of the sharks that you bring in. So, but that's cool. So
yeah,
so 2 weeks. Yeah, that trip always fascinates me because like Texas has had that same impression on me. It's like it's weird because you wouldn't really think it, because I don't know, sort of like a rustic type of place, but there's something about the fishing down there that like really like is, I don't know. It's like it has such an impression on you. I guess the fact that the fish get so massive doesn't hurt. It certainly helps. But you managed to get the alligator gar, and then I know you spent some time with Austin. Was that all part of the plan, or was that just kind of like a wing it on the middle of, just jump out there out of nowhere, or had you been in communication with him?
Yeah, so kind of like a wing it. I was like, I'm gonna go down there, do the alligator gar, and then my first trip down there was designated, go down there, fish for alligator gar, do a little surf fishing, and that was kind of like my intro to Texas. And then my second time, maybe it was my third time. I think it was my third time. It was just about a year ago to this time now in March, April, something like that. And I'm gonna do like a full tour, like 2-week Texas trip. I'm gonna go down, target alligator gar again, and then I went from basically southern Texas, did like surf fishing, shark, went up a little bit, alligator gar on the Trinity River, and then went up north, and then met up with Austin, and then did carp fishing and buffalo fishing on a reservoir up there. So I did a little in between everything on Texas and got the whole experience.
Yeah, that's cool. I think you were there like not long after me and Josh had gone there. That's one I had wanted to. I've lived in Texas. I've lived in 3 different cities in Texas. Lived in several different cities in Oklahoma, and then right near there in Arkansas. So I've always been in that area, but I'd never done that stuff. I'd been watching Austin for years, catching those giant buffalo. So finally got to go do that. But that was a fun one. That was an interest. That was different, but that was a lot of fun. So when I saw you did it, it was like fresh in my mind because like we had just got done doing it. So I was like, oh man, Joe's down there with Austin. They're probably gonna catch something crazy. But yeah, you got that big black buffalo. That was awesome. So that was a cool one.
That's probably one of my highlight fish that I've caught is the black buffalo, because we originally went down to try, I think in the same reservoir that you guys did for smallmouth buffalo, and the wind was like 20-30 mile an hour, like consistent, and it was just not working. I caught like one carp in the morning, and then we switched to a smaller reservoir, like protected kind of by a bridge, and he's like, yeah, there's some buffalo here and carp, and we got on some good carp, like 20 pounds or so, a few of those, and then caught like 3 buffalo in a row. And it wasn't until like I caught them that I realized they were black buffalo that I'm talking about there. And he's like, there's no smallmouth here. So that was even better because I don't have that for my life list yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a new species to me. And I caught like an 18-pound one. Then like an hour later, I caught like a 22-pound one. And then like we were packing up our gear, and then one rod just went screaming out, grabbed that one, and that one ended up being a 34-pound black buffalo, which is just like mind blowing because like Minnesota, they're so hard to catch here. I only know a few being caught, and the state record I think is only like 20 pounds. So it just like absolutely is like this size get down there is just amazing. And I think Austin said too that was the biggest black buffalo that he's ever personally seen also. So that was like a huge highlight, like moment, like banger fish to end my trip on. And I was just kind of like sitting on cloud 9 for a while. Like I got home and I was like, I don't even need to fish. I'm just like, just still on the high from catching that buffalo, and just like reminiscing on my trip to like take it all in and like process what actually just like happened. Cause like, that's kind of like the thrill of it for me, is just like putting something together and then just watching it happen. And I mean, it's like, you're not doing it for anyone else or like, anything like that. It's just like something like inside you that just drives you to want to do it and just like meet those goals and just experience it, I guess. So it's kind of like just intertwined that you just grow up with that it's just like in you to like go out and kind of pursue that fish in that way.
Yeah, because that's kind of like where I don't know, that's where the curiosity comes in with me, is like you're making a lot of these trips seemingly alone, at least as far as like maybe if somebody else is with you, but like you seem to be the only angler involved, like you're going alone. And I know like a lot of people want to do these types of things, but it's like, you know, it's weird to just like gamble on your fortune. But like, I don't know, like what is like when you think of like, and I know you're doing Florida soon and you've done Florida in the past, but like what is like your process for researching like what the like game plan is, like laying out like what the agenda is? Are you flying in and renting a car? Are these like road trips where you're driving the entire length of the whole thing? Do you know ahead of time like what your plan is, how much like money this is all going to cost? Or do you pretty much just wake up and say, next weekend I'm going to drive that direction and we'll see what happens? All I know is I got to be back by this day. Because people want to know. It's like,
yeah, it's not quite that simple where I'm like, okay, I'm going next week. Usually I'll plan it like months in advance. They're always road trips. I never really flying, like to bring in all my gear, and then just plane tickets are expensive and you can't bring as much gear as you want. Like food, I'll bring down coolers. So I honestly do a lot of like a budget trip basically. So I'll do a lot of like camp on the way down, and we'll stop at like Airbnb. Like you can find some really affordable ones for like $100 for like a little like townhouse kind of thing. Stop and do that. And then you can have all the gear you want, bring it down there. You don't have to rent a car, drive to all your spots and do that. So I'll kind of map that out. And usually when I do go on the trips, my girlfriend will come with me. So she's awesome about that too. So she loves doing road trips also. She likes
Yeah.
outdoors. She fishes a little bit when we do it and stuff like that. But she just likes being outside and doing the whole road trip vacation experience also.
Right.
And then I'll just fish, and she reads her book and stuff like that, or just kind of tans in the sun, and then I'll catch a fish and she'll take my picture basically.
It's good to have your own designated photographer there. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
Exactly. So so I'm really appreciative that she does that stuff with me. But yeah, so I'll plan out kind of when, where, and then have a specific goal in mind to do that, and then just like research it completely of like areas it's found, like lures, tactics, everything like that, get like necessary gear I need, and then kind of figure out some other possible species that I'll be wanting to target down there also. So my upcoming Florida trip here is hopefully going to be for Goliath grouper and then some more sharks from the surf. But then I got a lot of other like freshwater species that I want to be trying there. So like fishing the canals for like the peacock bass, the clown knife fish, snakeheads, which snakeheads been like way up there for me for a while too. Even though they're so common down by you, it's just like so far away from me that I've just heard about them and like seen stuff on TV. And I just remember like early 2000s when they came down to Florida and like the mayhem behind them, and just hearing about it, and even see like a movie come out of them like walking on shore and like attacking dogs and everything. So it's got like some folklore, you know what I mean? So it's got like some folklore behind it. It's really intrigued me in my curiosity. So that's another one. So I got a lot of the Florida exotics, and I've just been mapping out a bunch of spots potentially for some canals, and I'll kind of go from where I'm staying and then look at the waters around me, and I'll choose that specific location. So I'll be staying kind of by Boca Raton and everything, so kind of like in the heart of all that. And then I'll kind of pick out some canals and everything. And lucky enough, I'm friends with a few people on Facebook that live in Florida and know some stuff too, like you. And I'm gonna hopefully kind of pick their brains and figure out some spots and tactics and everything like that to go after these exotics, because I don't like it getting like handed to me, but I'll like maybe if they want to share like a canal or a specific area they'd like to try, and then kind of go from there. So I've kind of been piling up some stuff here the last month for my trip. I just got a box in from like Tackle Direct for tying up like shark rigs. I got like another rod in the mail, and then I got some other lures for snakehead and peacock, some like topwater frogs and all that. So I'm kind of prepping like months in advance for a lot of this stuff. And definitely take a lot of time and planning and dedication that goes into it, but it's definitely doable for the average like DIY tripper. And that's what I think is like the fun part about it, is just making your DIY trip, having one thing in mind, and then kind of going with the flow, and then stuff usually clicks. So if you don't get your main thing, you'll usually get some more species and stuff too, and just the overall experience even. So just kind of seeing a different part of the country.
I like South Florida, especially on the east side, like Miami type of area. It's like the ultimate, like, I don't know, urban fishing scene, like throughout the country. It's like, man, like the shore-based fishing, if you really want to just run and gun, hop out, do some fishing, jump back in the car, drive down the road, hop out, fish, it's like the ultimate place. I had so much fun when I first moved down here doing that. Like I was just going out like every single weekend going after it. But it's also like, to your point, it's a weird one, because I'll have a lot of guys that will do similar trips and they'll reach out to me for information. And it's like, you don't want to be the guy that just says, oh yeah, they're everywhere, because like it's such generic information. It's like, well, that ain't helping anybody. They're everywhere. Like, you don't want to be the one that gives crappy advice, but like with some of those fish, like the peacock bass, it's like that's almost as much like information as you can give to people, because they really are like, you've already been down here, right? Like have you already done that trip?
For
the peacocks and stuff?
Miami.
Yeah. Yeah, have you done that one
No,
yet?
I haven't done that yet.
Okay. Well, yeah, and
No,
you know,
that one.
I think we'll try to link up
What was that?
probably. I think you and I will probably try to link up anyway when you're down here. I imagine I can get away for some of it. I'd be happy to help you find some of them, but you will find that even you know during the time that you're by yourself, especially with peacock bass, they're pretty easy to find. And I mean I can send you areas to go look, but the snakeheads, they're also semi easy. They're a little bit more specific with like the region that they're in. And then the clown knifefish is one of those real, like, that's a weird one. They're in a very particular area, but they're very like hit or miss. Like it's kind of one of those ones that's like very hard to pattern. Like you'll see them rolling and stuff like a gar or like a tarpon, and then like they just won't eat. They just refuse to eat no matter what you put. And then like other times they aren't really rolling or moving that much, but you're getting them like crazy. It's like, well, what changed? It'd be like the next day, and then one day they're super active, one day they're not. But that's a fun one. When you're down here, I imagine we could probably link up. But yeah, that's a fun one. That's a trip to like everybody who's kind of like intrepid in their style of just always wanting to be on the move and try new things. Like everybody's got to do the little tour of South Florida exotics, because that's a fun one. And realistically, if you really like lay out a good game plan, you can knock out all of those fish the same day. I mean, you can get it. I think the first time Josh Dolan came down, we like caught like tarpon, snook, peacock bass, grass carp, Mayan cichlids, and like snakeheads, and like all in the same day, in one day. Like we almost got the clown knife done, and then maybe we pulled it off like the next day. So like if you're really running and gunning, I mean, you catch the fish you want and jump in the car and go to the next one, you could pull that off. But it's yeah, that's a fun one. So
yeah, definitely the clown knifefish I've seen that are notoriously hard to catch on lures. Is that correct?
Lures, yeah, the lures. I've never done it, and I am very skeptical of some of the photos. You know, you got to be, I don't know, like the South Florida like Instagram scene. Take it all with a grain of salt. You know what I mean? Like when the lure is like perfectly presented on the side of their face in the photo, and like people put like hashtag savage gear. It's like, I don't know if I trust you. You know what I mean? It's like, what are you trying to do? But yeah, they definitely can be. I mean, obviously it's a predatory fish, but it is a really even with live bait, it can be a really weird one. They're a tough one. Well, I'll say this though, when like the sun is high, if it's like a bluebird sky middle of the day, it's really hard. Like they need low light conditions. So early morning, late like into the evening as sun going down, or especially overcast. Or if the sun's high, just go fish under bridges. Excuse me. They like shade. Yeah. They're a weird one. But anyway, yeah, that's a cool one. We'll have to link up when you do that. But sure. I guess the next thing though, when I see how much you're like moving around and doing some traveling, is there anything else on your agenda? Like what else is looming for you? You got anything else in your mind? It's like outside of the boundaries of things you've done already. I don't want to necessarily go so far as to say bucket list, like leaving the country, but like things within reach, things that you can get into your vehicle and drive and go do. Is there any other ones that are sort of on the radar that aren't necessarily too far into the distant future?
You mean like, or you like,
hang on a minute, it's cutting out like crazy. Try it again.
Yeah. Thinking about like bucket list trips, or just fish that I'd like to catch like around me, like Midwest.
Not even necessarily Midwest, but like within the United States that you could literally get into your car and drive to go do.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I just mentioned, the Florida trip with the Goliath grouper, that's way up there, and that's been on top of the list for a long time since I've seen them as a kid. They look like a big smallmouth, and just their size and demeanor is just intriguing to me. So that's why I'd want to do that. And then, like you said before, the white sturgeon, haven't experienced that, so that's up there too. But I'm kind of always stuck. Seems like I'm going south all the time, just
Yeah.
because it's the complete opposite of the states. And I'm north, that's south. It's warm, and I don't know. I just keep making trips down there and kind of postponing this white sturgeon trip, but
I know.
eventually I hope to do that sometime. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's sort of like in that same category as alligator guard. It's like those high mantle, like mega North American species that you gotta knock off. But you mentioned the snakeheads earlier, the bullseye snakeheads. I feel like there was a little hysteria around them when that all happened because it happened at the same time. It was like the bullseyes really started showing up at the same time that the northern snakeheads were showing up further up north. But down in Florida, it's like just par for the course, and some weird animal gets out and gets on the loose and just becomes part of the environment. Like people don't really freak out about it. It's like, well, that's to be expected. We got monkeys outside Silver Springs living in the wild. You got chameleons and iguanas and all kinds of crazy stuff down here. And the bullseyes, I don't know. I feel like people down here like are quicker to accept those things when they come. Not that that's a good thing. Like you don't want invasive species. I had to throw that out there. Like I don't condone the spread of invasive species, but when they're here, they're here. But I'll say the northern snakehead, that's one. Have you done that one yet? The northern snakehead?
No, I haven't. That one I'd love to do also.
That's a really cool one. That's a lot of fun. Yeah, that's one I throw my 2 cents in there, like a suggestion. It's a pretty easy DIY. You kind of need a boat. You kind of need watercraft. It might be harder to pull off from the bank, but that's a really cool one. That's one you got to do. And I know a lot of guys that do that. Josh took me to go do it to get my first one. Their area is really neat. It's so much different than the bullseyes. I guess probably mostly because like the terrain you're fishing just feels so pristine and wild. It's much more like hunting. But and they're just so cool looking. But that's one you got to add to the list. I feel like that's a low hanging fruit. I think that's an easy one, But that's a cool one. That scene is growing fast.
Yeah, like you mentioned, this is like they're so common like that, like in South Florida or anything like that. But it's like when you live across the country, you're just like, oh man, that looks awesome. And especially it's so this looks so fun because that's my style of fishing, like running gun, and like I would love to just drive around, like hopping around in different canals. I like lure fishing, just casting, and then having the opportunity to land like just an unlimited amount of new fish to you that are just not found anywhere else. So like in Minnesota here, it's like our exotics kind of are basically common carp and goldfish, and anything else that is released dies by the time it's fall. And then once there's 30 inches of ice on the lakes, they're dead, and the remaining fish that are from here stay.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. And down here, it's like every other cast could be something different. So that's funny. How long are you planning to be down here for? Like 2 weeks again? Something like that?
Yeah, I'll be down there for 2 weeks this time. So I'm gonna go just basically drive as far as I can, hopefully stop probably around Georgia or Tennessee. That's about like 18, 20 hours. And then travel the rest down to Miami. But I've kind of gotten really used to the driving aspect. Just far distance. It's fun just seeing the country and stuff, and making pit stops along the road, and then fishing along the way. You know what I mean? So that's kind of part of the experience with it all.
Yeah, big time. I'm flying to Idaho. That's too far. I'm worried about vehicle trouble. So probably fly in there and maybe rent a car. We'll see what's going to go down with that one, but yeah, dude, we'll have to keep in touch with the Florida thing. I'll try to block off some time, and we'll meet up for whatever you want to chase. I know you mentioned bowfin. I mean, I can take you to some spots that have some giant one. We may not catch very many, but like I got some areas where there's some some big, just gnarly, just nasty looking ones. Just be whatever you want to try. But I don't know so much about that species. I don't know so much about finding the bowfin over like closer to Miami. There's sort of like not as many of them over there. Well, I mean, they're over there, but in like the canals of Miami, it's few and far between with them. And then there's a little bit smaller over there. But anyway, that's interesting. I love to know like guys that are moving and traveling and doing things. I always like want to know like what you're planning on doing next. I think the fact that you do it like largely alone, or it's just you and your girlfriend, or you're just kind of road tripping it, laying out the game plan and just blocking off the time and making it happen. Like I want to see more guys doing that. You know what I mean? It's always fun to kind of like appreciate and like your home waters and like stay loyal to your home waters. But at some point, I don't know, you get called to do more. So I love watching your stuff because you're always doing something different. Like I said, from the ice fishing to the beach fishing, like everything in between. I'm like, man, this dude's out there getting after it. So I love watching that.
Yeah.
I had to know what's coming next, but anyway, I know we're coming close to our 6:30 time because then I got to go do homework with my kids. That's fun. But so I don't know. I guess I usually like in like, I don't know. I mean, people, I don't think you're one of those real big social media guys, but you know, people who want to see this kind of stuff. Are you on Instagram? Are you doing the Instagram thing, or did you sort of back off of that? It looks like maybe.
Yeah, I posted just like Instagram for a while, but I kind of just was like, whatever. Like I don't know these people kind of thing, and I've kind of just stuck to Facebook since those are my friends and family, you know. So I'll kind of just post it to share my catches with them because those are the people like interested the most. So you can link my Facebook if you'd want to do that. People want to add me. And then I recently did TikTok too, which is a funny story because I had this like random snippet videos from like you know, if you're fishing, you have a video of like a release or just some random stuff sometimes that you take on your phone. And I was like, I have so many videos, and I was kind of like anti-TikTok. I thought it was just like meaningless, kind of, you know what I mean? Like just like videos, like your attention spans like a second, you're like next video. So I don't really scroll a lot on there, but I'll just kind of throw some videos together and post, and somehow I gained like traction really quick. And like my first few months, I got like 10,000 followers. And then since then, I've gotten like another like 12, 13,000. So I'm sitting at like 22, 23,000 followers. And some of the videos that have taken off are just crazy. Like I did one on how to tie a knotless knot for like catfishing, and it got like 3 million views. And I was what? This is crazy. Yeah. So then, and then they gave me the opportunity to do like creator fund once I hit 10,000 followers. So just posting videos, I've actually like made money on some of those random videos.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So like, yeah, so I can send you my TikTok link, and then I'll go through phase where I'll post some and then I'll kind of not post them. And lately, since it's winter here and I don't really record anything when I'm ice fishing because it's cold and I don't want to take my gloves off, I don't really post too much like that. But I'm guessing that spring I'll probably start posting more frequently. So you can post a link to that too also, I can send you.
Sure. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. I don't have TikTok quite yet. I just like, oh, I don't want to have another thing to have to like maintain, but you never say never. But I've heard the same thing and I've seen the same, like the most random stuff will sometimes take off and like get massive views. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to crack the code, but who knows?
Yeah,
I didn't even, honestly, I was the same way with Instagram at first. I'm like, I ain't doing that crap. But then it got to a point where like I wanted to like keep like, you know, basically like an online photo album. As I got well, that's where I'll designate all my fishing stuff. And then Facebook can be more only people that I know. And granted, I got a bunch of people that I don't even know on there. Always random fishermen friend request me. I'm like at that point where am I going to have to start like just telling people no? But anyway, but
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you'll have to send me that link, and I'll throw it up there. But and then you know, obviously off sidebar when we jump off of here, we'll stay in touch about your Florida plans. We'll try to link up. That'd be awesome. That'd be fun. So I think we can make it happen. If you're in my neck of the woods, I'll find time to come over there and link up, even if even if it's only for one day. But we might be able to pull off a weekend or something. You'll just have to let me know.
Yeah, yeah, because I'll be on that side too. I'll be by the Boca Grande and the Englewood area too. Yeah. So I'll be going to Miami and then doing a little loop back around there. So I'm down for bowfin or even some of those like smaller like freshwater tarpon, because those things look awesome. You get them in the mangroves there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was wild.
That's on the Tamiami Trail. You got to be careful down there. You'll find yourself there the whole trip, because you'll have so much fun on that freaking road before you realize you've blown the whole amount of time you have just fishing there. But you got to have a little bit of discipline to pull yourself away from that place. That's a fun spot. If you're going to loop down and go across the Tamiami Trail, I wouldn't go across I-75. There's some fishing there, but like if you want to have a lot of fun, go further south, cross 41. The roadside fishing there is so much fun. But yeah, we can do a lot of that stuff. I live in Naples, so you'll be passing through where I'm at anyway. But anyway, dude, I'm gonna let you hop off here. I got to go take care of the kiddos' homework and things, fun stuff like that, and we'll have to stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, dude. All right, man. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Boundless Pursuit podcast. If you enjoyed this show, your feedback, comments, and reviews are very important to me. Also, this podcast is just one element to a much bigger content outlet. I urge you to head over to www.haverodswilltravel.com, where you'll find audio, visual, and written editorial content. That is 3 dimensions of awesome fishing content brought to you by a very dynamic team of anglers. I hope that you'll tune in next week as we continue to build this program and have interesting and skilled anglers each Thursday. Thank you for listening.